right, so here is part 2 of our Advanced Excel Formulas unit, which is Excel 8. And we're going to go over a couple of additional things. We're going to complete the rest of this worksheet, and we're going to do a couple of minor changes as well. Let's go ahead and pop back up here and take a look at this HLOOKUP table. Now, if you recall, we set this to be an exact match, which means you have to have typed in a state that's actually in this table. So if you type MS for Mississippi, an error would come up. Here, I'll do it on the bottom one just because it's easiest to remember to change. So instead of Illinois, let's say we typed in Indiana. Well, notice it's going to throw us an error because Indiana is not in this list of states. And that's because we set it to exact match. And how did we do that? Well, we set this to false. If you set it to true, it does what's called an approximate match, which means alphabetically Indiana is close to Illinois, so it went ahead and matched it anyway. Well, that would be very wrong on this one. So let me switch it back to false, meaning it has to be an exact match. Now, so what if somebody does type that in, and this makes no sense to them because it's throwing an error? What you can do is you can modify a formula by adding what's called an if-error function. It's basically a customized error message that better explains this. So since Indiana is not in the table, what we could do, so that if anytime anybody types in one that's not in the table, we get an error that explains the error rather than just some random error, we put, instead of, right after the equal sign, instead of whatever the formula is, we leave this formula alone, it's going to stay there, but we're going to type in around it, if error, and you can type it in all caps, I just apparently had my caps lock on, and then your open parentheses, and then your value, of course, is all of this, and then comma, and then the value if there's an error. So if there's an error, what do we want it to say? And in this case, we'll just say state not eligible, because it's not one of those states that gets a grant, for grant. State not eligible for grant, okay? And so, again, everything that was already there is in parentheses, and then a comma at the end, and then the error message. And you close the parentheses. It's really that simple. And then when you hit enter here, since we have Indiana in there, it's going to say Indiana is not a state that's eligible. We type Illinois in, Illinois is eligible. We type Alaska in, Alaska is not eligible. Okay? So try that out for size and see if you can get that to work. And then let's just change that from Illinois to Indiana so that you can test that out. Another thing that's going to be mentioned in this chapter of the book is using conditional formatting. Now, we've used conditional formatting before for various things. They're going to do it for basically for checking data redundancy. Now, with names, we could have multiple Bobs, Lucys, and Maxes. It wouldn't matter. But let's say that we had IDs in this field, like state ID numbers or your driver's license number, social security number, something like that was in this field. And so let's say all this entire range is going to get that. Well, what conditional formatting that they're going to talk about is how to highlight cells that contain duplicate values, so that if we've already got somebody in a table and then we go to enter them again, it's going to let us know that by highlighting those duplicate values, which is really useful in a long table. If you have 1,000 things in there and you don't realize that person's already a customer in there, that would be a problem. So remember when we did access, we could set it so that something couldn't have duplicate values. So this is kind of like doing that, but in Excel. So under conditional formatting, I'm going to go to duplicate values, and it just says format cells that contain a duplicate with just light red with dark red. We'll say that's fine. So right now there's no duplicates in here, but if I come into one of these cells and I type Bob again, notice now both my Bobs light up. So now I can look and see, oh, okay, well, Bob's already in there, so that's not good. I probably need to take him out. Or, you know, this wouldn't happen with the name Bob, but it would happen with an ID number or something that was in there twice. So it's really a nice little tool in there. Now, if you need to manage those rules, under condition formatting is manage rules. If you need to make a change to a rule, you would go to manage rules. You don't go set the rule again. That would set a whole nother rule. So this is your conditional formatting rules manager. This tells you that that range, that G16 to G23, is set to look for those duplicate values. If you wanted to change that, maybe you don't like it being red with red, you can click on edit rule, and then you can choose the format for that rule. So you can be like, yeah, I don't like red with red. I want, and then, you know, pick your colors or whatever here. So maybe I want it to have, yellow would look dumb. Let's just say black on red. So there's the font color. Your fill would be here. Your fonts, your bold, italic, whatever. So I'm going to hit OK, and now I've changed the rule. And when you hit OK, that rule will then be modified. So now I don't have red letters, I have black letters. Okay, so give that a shot, and then, you know, type in an extra one in there to see if it works. I'm going to go ahead and type in Judy also, and then you can see Judy's going to light up. So that's conditional formatting and utilizing manage rules to fix a conditional formatting problem in case you have it formatted incorrectly or you don't like the way it looks. All right, let's come down to the last little bit here. You'll find this one's pretty simple. We're going to do count if and sum if, but I will just mention there is also an average if, and there are also sum ifs and count ifs. That's right, with S's on the end of them. And as you might guess, the ones with plural are going to have multiple criteria. So that's how they'll work differently. You'd be able to figure it out if you went into the little function wizard box anyway. But here's what this does. So we can use a count if statement to count something if it meets a criteria. So for instance, we can say in this range, count how many of the people are males, or count them if the gender is equal to M, right? So in here, we can either type it in, or we'll click the thing. I'll go ahead and click it. Count if is the one I'm going to do, and we're going to count it if, and then the range. So the range would be right here where these are, B8 to B42. Again, if you're going to be using ranges like this, sometimes it's a good idea to go ahead and name that range so it's absolute, because otherwise you may have to go in there and put in all those dollar signs just to be on the safe side to make sure it doesn't accidentally move around if we were to copy the formula. We wouldn't necessarily need to copy this formula, but we are going to, because we're going to make a copy of this formula and just change the value. So the criteria is that it has to equal M. Now, the way this works is you can either put the M in quotation marks, or you can put the operator with the M in quotation marks. So you could, the operator in this case would be an equal sign. It equals M. But the equal sign is optional. You don't actually have to put in an equal sign. But if you were doing like greater than or less than, you would need quotation marks in this type of a formula. So we hit OK, and it tells us there are 2 males. Now, because I made this an absolute value, I can copy this down. If I would not have made this an absolute value, it wouldn't work right. Okay? So if ahead of time you name this gender over here, and then when you get ready to type in this formula, you put gender in that first box, then it's going to work fine too. But in this case, I'm going to pull it down. Of course, it's still looking for males, so I'm going to double click and edit this formula and set it to equal females, and then we should be good to go there, and it's counted our females. Okay? The number who love, and then we have a value in here, blue. So favorite color here, we have all those listed here. So this time I'm going to go ahead and name my structured range. So I'll just call it colors. And then number who love that color blue. So I'm going to go in here and do another count if. My range, well, I've already named it, color. Did I name it color or colors? I don't remember. Colors. Okay, good. Colors. And the criteria here, this time our criteria is going to be equal to whatever's in this box. So in this case, it's H41. Now this should be an absolute value because we forever want to point to that box. So again, you would put those dollar signs around the column and row so that that always points to that one box. Not that we're going to copy this formula, but we do want to just kind of get in the habit of that. So we go there, and indeed, we have one person who likes blue. Now, if I'm going to go in here and change this to red and hit enter, it should update, and indeed it does. Great. So we have 3. All right, last one here. Same situation. We're counting them if they meet a criteria, and in this case, the criteria is selling over 5 items. So again, we could go ahead and set this range and call it whatever, sold items or something like that. In my case, I didn't do that, so I'm just going to select the area. Again, probably it would be a good idea to go ahead and make it an absolute value just to be on the safe side. and then you set your criteria. In this case, over 5 would be greater than 5, and you want to make sure you press tab and let it put those quotation marks on there for you, or if you're typing it in manually, you'll put those in. I sometimes like to use the box on these because sometimes I forget whether or not I need the quotation marks, and of course if you're using this box, it's going to add them for you if it's needed. I'm going to hit OK, and sure enough, we have how many sold over 5? We have 2, the 8 and the 10. So we're good to go. This next one works similarly. So sum if does the same thing. It's going to add up the numbers if, of course, they do what they're supposed to do. In this case here, total sales by grade. So we're going to total, we're going to sum the sales if they're 11th graders. So this works just like count if. And like I said, there's one called average if too that you'll use. I'm going to look for sum if. Oops, just the sum if, not the ifs. Again, the ifs just has additional criteria. You can see there's just more criteria boxes in there. See. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and hit OK for sum if. Again, my range here, and we're talking about total sales, so your range is going to be where your sales are. And again, probably you should make that absolute. I'm not going to take the time right now for you to watch me do that. The criteria here is we're pointing to this box. We will always point to that box, so I will indeed make that one an absolute reference because it's a special box. And then it says, what's the sum range? So, well, let's back up here. My range to evaluate for 11th graders is not the same as my sum range. So this is wrong. What I'm saying here, which was wrong, is look at these numbers and find the 11th graders. Well, it can't look at those numbers, right, because those are sales. So, fail on my part there. The range would actually be here where the grades are. Okay, and then the sum range is after I look at these and I pull out the 11th graders, then what? And in this case, I want them to sum something, which is their sales. And so the sum range is going to be that range where those numbers are that we want them to add up. And there you go. And in your book, when you work through the chapter, they'll usually have these saved already as structured ranges, so you won't be having to deal with, you know, alphabetical and numeric ranges. All right, the final one here is total sales by the males. So again, situation is going to be a sum if because we're going to be totaling something, we're summing it. The range, again, we're looking at sales by male, so our criteria is going to be male. So our criteria range will then be the gender. The criteria will be male, and we don't have like a box where we pick that. So in this case, we would set whatever that is, and in this case, it's an M. Oops, M. And then the sum range, where are the sales that we're going to sum up? And there you go. And again, you could have used M or you could have said equals M. They have the same result. It doesn't matter which one that you use. So there you go. That is lesson 8.2 and 8.3 between these two videos. And hopefully that helps you to understand. And when you work through your chapter, you should find it to just be a breeze. So good luck.